I am your host, Beth Clarity Lewis. I am the founder of Verve Counseling, the founder of Long Live Lively, and the founder of this podcast. Welcome to the Verve Counseling podcast, titled This Won't Be Done by 5, which gives a nod to the human condition, which simply holds no deadlines. I'm just going to stop there. Welcome to the Verve podcast, Season 4. I'm so excited about this season as we interview and hold conversations with some of Texas's best therapists. Do you want to know what CBT is, EMDR? How about ART? So many acronyms in our industry, and the Verve Counseling team is here to debunk, explain, and to simply shine a light on how our therapists do the exceptional work we are known for with our clients. Follow our podcast on YouTube or our website, vervewell.org, where you'll also find access to our blog, my self-help book, and the ability to schedule sessions with our fabulous team. Thank you for supporting all we do at Verve Counseling. Now for our podcast titled This Won't Be Done by 5, which gives a nod to the human condition, which holds no deadlines. So today, Heather, we are going to shine a light on you and the excellent work you're doing here at Verve Counseling. Not only does Heather stay repeatedly booked, she also is our very loved office manager. Loved by me. I'll speak up for myself. I wouldn't know what to do without her. So what we're going to do today, I guess, is just a little Q&A. We can talk a little however you want to see it go, Heather. We just want to know more about what you find to be exciting about your job, what you enjoy about the therapies you use, what are some of the theories you subscribe to, what you have, anything really. It's kind of up to you to just tell us where you want to go. How about you take it from here?
Sure. Sounds good. So I've been in some sort of mental health support for, I think, like 24 years now. Anywhere from inpatient clinical work to school counseling, then to now to private practice. And I think, got to my theoretical ways of operating kind of out of schooling, as well as the environment that I was working in for the most of my career, which was school counseling and crisis intervention in the schools, things like that. So CBT, a cognitive behavioral therapy, is my primary theory that I work from, because that's what's almost necessary in that school environment, because it's got to be a quick turnaround, right? Just the volume of students that you see. I think one year I had almost 650 students that I was responsible for, 9th through 12th grade. And so, like, you can't sit for 50 minutes with you can, but it's an emergency situation if you're sitting with a student for 50 minutes. It's 10, 15 minutes, regulate, and back in the classroom. And if they can't regulate, they got to go home, right? They got to go to the nurse. So it's just a different environment. So that CBT was very helpful in that regard, because it was, hey, what's going on? What are you thinking? What do you think somebody did? What are you struggling with? How are you feeling about that? And so why can't you stay in class? Why do you need to go home? Why are you struggling with that teacher, right? The thought process, the emotion, and the behavioral component. Bam, bam, bam. The beauty of private practice, though, is, like, I still work from that theory, but we get to expand it and we get to go slower. And from the what do we think? What do we believe? what type of emotional reaction or emotion are we experiencing because of that, and then how those two things together, how's that affecting our behavior, the way we're stepping out into the world, how we're functioning or not functioning. So I think that that's been a beautiful sort of transition, and the ability to continue to use what I know and what I'm experienced with. Um, I do think in private practice, the shift has been I've been able to add a lot more of the solution focused therapy model, which I really, really love, because that's where we make change, right? We make change with what isn't working and what can we try that might work, that might improve the way we're thinking, or the emotions we're experiencing, or the way we're behaving, reacting, interacting with the world. So that's really beautiful. I also love me some Alfred Adler individual psychology, because I am a huge proponent. Actually, the article I wrote this week was on eldest daughter syndrome. But I'm a huge believer in birth order and some family systems components. And so I love that, especially with my work with couples and families and individuals. It's just important to be able to dive in and sort of, let's see, what's the word? Validate people's experience of their childhood and their experience within their family, and how that affects their life. So that's kind of all of my tornado theories spun into one statement there. So hopefully
But
that's
you
enough
are,
information.
no, that's wonderful. And I have some questions. You also have mentioned your intrigue, your curiosity around the therapy of intergenerational family, which you started going in that direction, explaining this. And I enjoy generational trauma, and the intergenerational family therapy kind of shines a light on all the things learned, the good, the bad, and the ugly, through from one generation to another, which I absolutely love as well. I'm one of those therapists who does love discussing childhoods and family relations and what role my client may have played within their family. And I believe that that is of interest to you as well. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. I don't know, it's been probably a year and a half, and I had the opportunity here at Vervewell to start with um, a member of a family group, and then it just like grew and grew and grew to where I really began to do this like multi-generational family therapy work. And how I define that is it is adult children and their parents, right?
Yeah.
And I have had some work with people in their 20s and their parents, even teens and their parents, and facilitating hard conversations. But what I find is the bulk of this work is really, really coming from adults from like 35 to 55,
Mm-hmm.
um, because the parents are 65 to 80 ish. That boomer generation, which I know we hate that, but those terms, sometimes those terminologies are negative. But when we are falling in line with the stereotype of that, and we are treating our adult children and or having expectations of our adult children that fall in line with that, it's really problematic, especially in the way that adults, middle-aged adults, are experiencing life, is having kids later, creating careers later, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of responsibility. And so we have this group of adult children who are raising kids, who are running companies, who are trying to keep the lights on in their own four walls and handle their own business. And then we have these aging parents who lack competence to adult. And so they're like, again, recreating this sandwich generation, and it's very, very stressful. It's very, very toxic from time to time. Um, but if people are willing, there is a lot of power in the ability to do a couple of different things. A, learn how to communicate differently, because the children have to learn how to communicate like an adult to another adult, which is their parent. Um, and not be afraid of that. And that includes boundary setting and a bunch of other things. The parent has to understand that their role is completely different now, right? Their roles and responsibilities. Most of the adults I work with don't need a parent anymore. They need the parent to continue to parent themselves, like continue to be the adult. They don't need the parent's help anymore. And the adult child has to come to terms with, hey, these roles that you've been playing, these expectations, this is the hard part. I think it's like we have to kind of heal from how detrimental maybe that's been most of our lives.
Right.
And we have to, and there's a lot of guilt that comes with that, some shame that comes with that. So it's so fascinating, and it's just really like, it's just a huge onion, and there's so many layers to peel apart with it because it involves more than one person.
Right.
So the family therapy as well as the couples therapy, I love because it is so layered in multiple experiences. And so the work is just pulling that all apart and seeing how we can help.
And I think that intergenerational piece is most pertinent and really possibly not only applied, but it is for adult children, because that's the age when you start adulting and start realizing I don't need to be parented. So that's when the shift starts taking place, and the realization that, oh, wow, I don't need to be parented by my parents any longer. I need them to sustain their own wellness and health and thrive in their own lives. And look at how I'm parenting my children. And is it reminiscent at all, or is it mimicking at all some of the shortcomings that I was taught, or is it reminiscent or mimicking at all some of the great things I was taught? So it's absolutely going to be the best work happens when the child is an adult raising children. So that's cool stuff. I agree with you. I thoroughly enjoy
And I
it.
even, I see a lot of clients who are in their 40s and just have chosen not to have children. And so we look at a lot of them are business owners or physicians, or they've created these really high level professional worlds, and that is their family, right? Like that's also a family. So it's not to negate, like, if people don't have children,
Right.
there is a whole nother part of their world they are responsible for.
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes the focus, just like a child would. And that is really hard for parents to understand.
Mm-hmm.
It's just your job.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just a meeting. No, it isn't. Like, it's literally how I keep the lights on. Like, and that you don't respect that is very triggering for some adult children, And then you couple both of them together, right? We are raising children and we have these careers. It's a double dose of difficulty sometimes.
Yeah. We put our nurturance somewhere.
Heather, you've been explaining like high functioning, successful young adults and their parents. Do you ever see people who it's sort of the opposite, where there's adult children sort of failing to launch? Do you work with those people?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's interesting, Jason, how those individuals get to me, because it will usually be either the parent coming to me saying, hey, I'm having this issue. How do I handle this as the parent? And that the work is very similar, though. It's like shifting that role and responsibility to how do I help them launch? How do I empower them? Right. Rather than, so it's, some of the work is the same. It's just looking at it from a different direction. Or somehow the parent will get the adult child to come to therapy to say, hey, you should really work with someone, and maybe you'll listen to them since you won't listen to me. and eventually the beauty, if we can make it happen, is for them to come together, or if they're more comfortable working with them individually, but we're working on the same goal just from a different perspective. So yeah, absolutely. And interestingly enough, like the work is the same, it just sometimes goes in a different, it's like in a reverse direction.
Yeah.
And so but yeah, that's and I know you work with a lot of younger adults kind of in that life transition, like on their own individual stuff of like, what do I want to do, and how how can I move forward in my world as an adult?
How can I get there?
Yeah, how can I get there?
Yeah.
And so that's yeah, and we have to teach the parent to stop enabling the behavior, right? We have to have hard conversations, and we have to not give in and not give them what they want. And it feels like it's taking away love, but it's doing the exact opposite, right? Like it's showing them that you love them if you're trying to do everything you can to help them to learn and grow. So yeah, that's a fun one too, Jason.
Yeah, so at its core, both scenarios are sort of, you're teaching the older generation of parents to stop being a parent and let their adults be adults.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty much.
Just in different ways, but
yeah. And it is hard. And I have personal experience with that idea of wearing a different hat, right? Like, I'm still their parent until the day I die, but the way I parent and what my capability is in that role, it just looks very different. And so that's it. And it's not easy. Like, it wasn't easy and isn't easy for me. I have to remind myself all the time. So it's just something that sometimes people have just never even heard that as an angle before, of like, I can still be their parent, but what does that look like now? No one's ever walked them through that. So sometimes that's really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can imagine the identity shift. I haven't gotten there because my daughter's 3, but the identity shift from being a parent for 18 or 25 or however many years to still being a parent, but not parenting in the same way. It's like, maybe that's all that's what they've known. That's become their identity. And so do you have that conversation a lot where people are like, I haven't taken care of myself first for 25 years. I don't know how to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah. And then, and especially if that person's coming to me in individual therapy, you talk about, like, usually it's the trifecta of, I have adult children, I'm in perimenopause or menopause, and I'm like at this midlife crisis, like I've been pouring into everyone else my whole life, and now I'm at this age and I don't even know what I want to do or who I am. So yeah, it can be a really tough spot to find yourselves in it. And on the couples end of things, it very much changes the dynamic of marital or couple relationships sometimes too, when those kids shift into that adult children world. So kind of everybody involved can use support.
I love this conversation because I feel like it really points towards the idea that we never really stop growing or developing throughout our lives. Like, development keeps happening well into adulthood. When, our children even become adults, we're still changing and shifting and looking at what things need to be based on developmentally what's happening around us.
Yeah.
Kind of a pivot, because you also brought up couples, Heather. I believe at one point when you and I were talking, you mentioned that you had done some sort of training, correct me if I'm wrong, in sex therapy. Mm-hmm. I would love to hear more about that and how that helps couples in the therapy room.
Yeah, absolutely. I did a program with Dr. Tammy Nelson called Integrative Sex and Couples Therapy. Words are hard. And it was really great because, when I'm telling 9 times out of 10, and the other time they're just not admitting it. But couples will end up in the room and we are having the issues with kind of when I work with couples, I do what I call like pillars work, like pillars of our relationship: communication, boundaries, and expectations, because kind of all of the issues will fall into one of those compartments, I guess. but most of the time they're coming because money is a problem or sex and intimacy is a problem. Yeah. Right. And we're not communicating appropriately about those. We don't have appropriate expectations about those, or we don't have boundaries around those. Right. So I think this the biggest thing, Aria, to maybe answer your question, is just me being open to that and not uncomfortable with that. And just telling couples ahead of time, almost in the first or second session, I will say, we will talk about money and we will talk about sex. Yeah. Right. Like and so I say it out loud so they know I'm comfortable with it. I say it out loud so they can get comfortable with it. And most couples are like, oh, thank God. Right. Mm-hmm. Like they're just glad that they came to somebody that's not uncomfortable with that. But one of the greatest things I learned that's just like a tool that I use because most people take to it pretty well is called a sex date. And it asks couples to create a time ideally it's in their week, depending on how a couple shows up. If they haven't had sex in 6 months, we're not starting with a week. We're starting with once a month, right? Like it just depends. But you create this sex date time. And what that means is we are just going to spend time together being intimate, period. Whatever that looks like. If we haven't had sex in 6 months, we're not going to be having sex that day, right? We're going to be maybe cuddling with less clothes on. We're going to be having a massage and that's it. Then maybe the next week, the other person gets a massage, right? And it builds up. And what that does is it creates a lack of expectations around intimacy, right? It creates, hey, we're just going to get comfortable with being near each other, the idea of intimacy, and it's safer, especially for that partner who's maybe been more intimacy averse. It's a lot safer. And usually, if I can get couples to buy into it, we're like on week 2 or maybe 3, and they'll come in and say, okay, we're going to be in trouble. And I'm like, why? And they're like, well, we had sex on our sex date. I'm like, oh no. I'm like, yeah, that's what's supposed to happen, right? But you take the expectations out of it. You make it a safe space of it's just about physical touch. That's it. I don't have to do anything if I don't want to. And it ends up just that natural attraction and why they love each other in the first place. It kicks in. And so it becomes a safer space. So that's one of the greatest tools I learned out of that training was just to give it some levity, I guess, just make it lighter, just give them an opportunity to get back into that realm because there's a lot of damage that can happen from sex and lack of intimacy. There's a lot of guilt, a lot of shame, a lot of times around sex and sexual relationships. So it's a way to lighten it a little bit and get people back in the swing of things.
Mm-hmm. Heather, how much do you find that just in general expectations are this thing that can really negatively affect relationships?
Oh, I think almost all the time, probably, right? I mean, and I know, Beth, you work with couples, Blake and Jason, you do too, but what I find, and I'd love to hear from you guys, is I think the problem is unspoken expectations, right? Mm-hmm. I find a lot of couples have a lot of expectations of each other and they're just milling around in here and they're just hanging out there building up resentment and you've never even actually asked for that. Or you did, and it was like 8 years ago before you had kids and he should just know that's what he's supposed to do or she's supposed to do. So overwhelmingly, I find that becomes the issue is either unspoken or unrealistic expectations. So I don't know. I'd love to hear what y'all's view is on that.
I've heard the saying that expectations are premeditated resentments. So I don't know.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I see that a lot. And then whenever I approach that, like, hey, all of us have to communicate more. We have to over communicating is a lot better than under communicating because it's likely that you've gotten into this pattern because you've under-communicated your expectations. What do you say when somebody comes back with, well, I don't want to have to tell him or her what to do all the time?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I understand that, there's usually a person has high expectations and is meeting theirs, and the other person isn't meeting the expectations their partner has. I can understand why it would be like, I don't want to be your parent or have to tell you that the dishes are dirty and they need to be done. But how do you work through that?
It kind of depends on the couple, right? And that's one of those things where I always use this expression with my couples. I said, I'm going to need you guys to lean in on this one, right? Because that'll be a place where this person has this idea and this is the way. This person has this idea and this is the way. And I'm like, okay, we're literally going to get no place if that's where we're going to stay. So I'll say, I'm not asking you to become a different person, but I need you to lean in a little bit. And so for an example like that, like I would say to, maybe it's the wife, usually is, I don't want to have to tell him. He should just look around and know what needs to be done. I'm going to say, well, you're going to have to tell him. Like you have an unrealistic expectation right now, but tell him the same thing. Tell him that expectation, because there is a reason why he doesn't see that. It's because she's done, most of the time, because she's done it for forever. Now she's got 3 little kids running around and needs help, but has never allowed him to do that, is usually what happens. I said, well, you're going to have to tell him. You have to reteach, right?
Yeah.
And the more you're willing to reteach, his part of leaning in is, I got to freaking remember this.
That's right.
Like, it has to be important to me.
That's right.
I have to learn to understand that this is the thing she needs me to do every time and not screw it up. But both people have to work on that, because as she's asking him to do it, he's doing it. She's following behind him going, that's not how you do that. So we're creating, it's like you both have work to do here, and that's that leaning in process. So it's just, like I said, that's the work that happens. That's the work that happens outside of the 50 minutes of the therapy session room, is stuff like that.
Whenever you're, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Blake.
Oh, I was going to say, so one of the things that I have found sometimes with people is, even in whether it's individual work and people are talking about their partners, or if it's in couples work, a lot of the time, what Jason was saying, like, I don't want to be their parent. And it seems like there's a huge barrier that can happen whenever somebody feels resentment towards having to ask the other person to do something. And I wonder if there's any way that you have found in your work with people to kind of, I guess, undermine that resentment, or help this person work through the anger that they're feeling towards, trying to have to almost help this person to change, even if it's not technically their job, but there seems to be a lot of the time, there's a lot of resentment towards, like, even if the person does change, but they're not it's not a one and done change, and they do it again, then it's sometimes even the resentment comes back 10 times stronger than it was originally.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to just answer super briefly, but then, like, if anybody else has their idea, my almost go-to with that is we got to get with that individual that's harboring the resentment and find out, where does that come from, right? Like, because, like, I can say for me, going back to, like, this is how life is so multi-layered. Like, I'm the oldest daughter. And so I struggle when people are not competent, like, cannot stand it. And so I have no patience for incompetence or not trying. So if it looks like someone isn't trying to do the thing that I've asked them to do, it's almost immediate. But I do work on myself, and I know that, so I can stop and be like, okay, hold on. You told him to take that over. He's doing it the best he can. We're gonna keep our mouths shut, right? So it's me knowing where that comes from, why that is such a trigger for me, and holding myself back, giving my partner the opportunity to change.
Yeah.
Right. So and that's the hard part, is because if we only see people as a couple, sometimes it's hard to get there when they're both in the room.
True. Yeah.
So that's sometimes where it's like, maybe I would recommend, if I see that we can't get past that in a couple session, I might recommend, hey, I would love it if you would come and see me 1 or 2 times by yourself. So anyway, that was not brief. Shocker.
Well, Heather,
somebody else tell me their thought.
I want to jump in on the expectations, and I'm going to throw in the concept of trust too. With my clients, I use both of those and identify that both of those are a two-way street. And Heather, you went there. You said one has to verbalize the expectation and the other has to remember it. So it's an exchange, expectations. It's not just one person voicing and saying, I expect this from you. The other person has to show up responsibly and say, I hear you, and put it into action. That's successful communication, one. So expectation. And it's the same as my confusing two-way street of trust, which is there's trusting and trustworthy. And so to be a trusting person, I trust Heather to tell me the truth. And Heather then is trustworthy. She tells the truth. So it's an exchange, just like expectations. So I find it really important when we talk about expectations with our clients to be very clear that this isn't one person's job. Resentment starts absolutely building when one person keeps verbalizing their expectations and they keep not getting heard. So yeah, you're going to get pretty darn ticked at that. So it's got to be an exchange. It has to be, here are some expectations. Are we on the same page? Do you hear me? And the other person saying, I can work with that. We are on the same page. I do hear you. And put it into action. Be competent, to Heather's point.
One of the things even within that I kind of run into with some people is I'm not really quite sure what it means to be heard, because I think some people have the definition of what it means to be heard is that this person agrees with me fully and does what I ask of them perfectly.
Wow.
But oftentimes I think being heard just means like I hear what this I understand where you're coming from. But I think for a lot of people it's not super satisfying, and I wonder if that's a problem that any adults run into as well.
I think that goes into that two-way communication and being able to say, here are my expectations. Here are my expectations. They're 3 things. And it has to do with doing laundry, whatever. Here are my expectations. And my partner then says, okay, I hear those expectations. Can we tweak this one? Can we do it this way on the other? Can we do that? That's being heard. That's hearing, because that is engaging in an exchange, a two-way street. So it doesn't just have to be the person with the expectations, I vote, doesn't get to be dictatorial, doesn't get to say, these are my expectations, so we're doing it this way. It really needs to be a conversation between 2 equal adults. And I emphasize that a lot with my couples is you 2 are equal players here. You're both on the same level. No one is parenting the other. No one is dictating to the other. It doesn't work that way. You're both, so a conversation about expectations, then that pulls up the ability to have expectations be that two-way street.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I do a couple little tools. I love tools with my clients, my couples. I will say, okay, I want you guys to go, in between now and the next time we talk, and I want you to come up with what are 2 or 3 of your requests of your partner. What are some things you would like to request of your partner and of that we think would make the relationship better. So those are things, like the expectations of, doing the dishes, doing the laundry, what would really, because most of the time also I will hear, I don't feel supported by that person. They just don't support me. They're just off doing their thing. I'm off doing my thing. We're living in 2 separate, especially people with younger kids. We're just roommates. We're just living 2 separate lives, and we come together.
Yeah.
And so I'll say, okay, I want you guys to come up with 2 or 3 things that how will you know if your partner is supporting you? What is it that you need to ask for? How will you feel very supported? Let's come back to the table with those. We're going to make those requests of our partner. And to your point, Beth, we bring those back to the session and we say, as you know, one partner makes the request, the other partner can say, absolutely, I can do that. Hold on, I don't really understand. Can I ask some more questions? Or hang on, I am not comfortable with that. Yeah. We have to talk through that, right? Like you can come with requests to your partner. They absolutely do not have to agree to do that, right? But that's where the discussion, and that's kind of like that guided discussion here in session, that's where that comes in. And what I like to do by the end of the session is come to one thing we can agree on. You know, I'm not asking them to come with 2 or 3 things, with a multitude, right? We're going to get to where we can agree on one thing that each person is willing to do. We're going to make that agreement before they leave. And then they will go off into the wild blue yonder and work on that for a couple of weeks. And then I'm their accountability. Because that's what happens a lot of times. If couples are struggling and they're not in therapy, there's nobody to hold them accountable but each other. Well, if they were good at that, they wouldn't need to be coming to therapy initially, usually, you know. So we'll make those agreements and out of those, coming with those requests, those needs, those expectations. But that's where the communication comes in, because we each get to say, I can do that. I'm not sure I can do that, or I'm not comfortable doing that. And we can have those safe conversations.
I like those options. And do you find yourself providing those options for them? Is that you kind of like, here's some options for answers, just to kind of nudge their conversation productively? Yeah. That's a great idea.
And I usually will tell them that when I send them off with that encouragement of like, come up with these things. And your partner will be able to say, like, I want them to be prepared for that. And then usually on that session, I'll remind them, hey, you can, you know, but the interesting thing is I find is usually everybody's like, yeah, I can do that. Because nobody's really asking for things that are completely out of the ordinary. A lot of times I'll get, okay, hold on, I want to make sure I understand what you mean by that. But I rarely do I get, I don't think I can do that.
Right.
So, which is a good thing. It makes it easier on everybody.
It is. Does anybody, Heather, thank you so much for all of this information and just shining a light on you today and how you kind of are so successful in the therapy office and your therapy room with your clients, and giving us some good tips and pointers, and just appreciate your time with that. And Heather also has written on our website, vervewell.org, you can click on the blog link and just enter Heather's name into it, and it will pull up all the articles she's written for our blog. You can do that with any of our therapists. Just punch in their first name and it pulls up the articles that they've written. Heather has written a couple of articles on what we've talked about today. Even that sandwich generation, I know you wrote something about that. And the one that drops tomorrow is talking about being the oldest sister in the family layout. And it's so really good stuff. Thank you so much for sharing. Please don't hesitate to jump on vervewell.org. You can catch all of our podcasts there, as well as on YouTube. YouTube is at Vervewell Counseling Podcast. It is titled This Won't Be Done by 5. Thank you so much. Anybody else have anything to add? Compliments to give Heather? Anything before we say goodbye?
I'll throw out there that, Heather, the thing I think I admire most about you is just how much you clearly love the work that you do. Like, you show up excited to do this every day, even when you're slammed, even when it's hard, even when you've got personal life stuff going on in the background. And I think if everybody in the world approached their job that way, we would have a lot more happy people walking around.
Here. I agree.
Thank you.
Okay, guys.
Well, thank you for giving me the time today to share about me.
Yeah. Loved it. Hey, you. Yeah, you. I told my therapist about you.